Imagine this for a second. A federal agency's new mission statement is so completely at odds with its staff that 70% of them just quit.
70%. It's an unbelievable number.
We're talking about the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. Over 200 federal attorneys, the vast majority of the people working there, just resigned. And not because of budget cuts, not because they were fired.
No, it was because of a single memo, one directive from new leadership.
A directive that told them to enforce the law neutrally for everyone. So if the very experts sworn to uphold our rights refuse to work when they're told to protect all citizens equally, what does that tell you? What was really going on inside our justice system?
It raises some fundamental questions about the administrative state itself.
We are going to uncover the full story of this massive shift, the radical strategy behind it, and what it all means. Stay with us as we break this down in our in-depth discussion right here on News Focus Podcast. And if you find our reporting valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to support our channel. We truly appreciate it.
The number itself, Alex, over 200 specialized attorneys just walking out the door, that points to a conflict that goes way beyond politics.
It's not just a disagreement.
No, it's a complete ideological rupture, a break in the entire philosophy of what that division was supposed to be doing.
Okay, so let's set the scene here, because this is all part of this bigger political fight against what people call the administrative state.
Right, this huge bureaucracy of unelected federal workers who are, for all intents and purposes, making policy.
And the DOJ's Civil Rights Division was seen by critics as like the beating heart of that structure, deeply entrenched, acting on its own.
That was exactly the criticism. Before all this happened, opponents were constantly describing the division as being inundated with rabid left-wing ideologues.
Strong words.
Very. The perception was that its focus had become really narrow, moving away from protecting everyone's rights to pushing these very specific politically charged causes that favored certain groups.
And there was a concrete example of this, right, from the previous administration.
Yes, and it was a major point of contention. The division was using its federal power to influence local policies.
Specifically around gender identity.
Exactly. The big one that always came up was the threat of suing school districts if they didn't allow trans athletes to compete in female sports. That became a sort of touchstone example for critics.
So that showed the division's ideological direction at the time.
It did. It showed, in their view, that the division wasn't just neutrally enforcing the Constitution. It was actively advancing a very specific, very progressive social agenda, and they argued this created what they called a two-tier justice system.
Okay, so that's the environment. And into that firestorm walks Harmeet Dillon, the new Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights.
And her arrival was not subtle. The sources frame it as bringing in someone who was there to do a complete teardown, not just a redecoration.
Not a flamethrower.
Something like that. And you can see from the staff's reaction just how big of a change it was. Her actions were immediate, and their response was, well, explosive.
How immediate?
Her second week on the job, the catalyst was a single memo. Simple, direct, unambiguous.
And it just rewrote the entire mission statement of the division.
And the fallout was instantaneous. I mean, sources say over 100 attorneys resigned almost on the spot.
100. Just like that.
Just like that. It was a mass rejection of the new mandate that I don't think anyone in Washington saw coming.
That's a huge number.
Yeah.
But that was just the beginning, wasn't it?
That was just the initial shockwave. You have to understand the scale here. The entire division, staff and all, is just over 300 people.
So 100 people walking out. That's a third of their legal experts gone overnight.
Overnight. And as the new policies started to actually be implemented, the resignations just kept coming. It compounded.
So what was the final tally?
In the end, it was over 200 attorneys who chose to leave. That's upwards of 70% of the division's total staff.
70%.
And the key, as you said at the top, is that this was voluntary. This was a self-purge. They chose to leave rather than work under this new mission.
Which brings us to the memo itself. What on earth was in that document that would make highly trained career lawyers just abandon their jobs en masse?
At its core, it was a mandate for neutrality.
What does that mean in practice?
It explicitly stated that the Civil Rights Division would now protect the rights of all Americans. Period. No preference, no prejudice. It was a direct rejection of the idea that its resources should be focused on some groups over others.
That sounds, on the surface, that sounds like the basic principle of equal protection under the law. Why would that be so controversial for civil rights attorneys?
Because for many of them, their entire philosophy was built on a different idea. They were recruited based on their alignment with the previous administration's focus on, righting what they saw as systemic wrong.
Which requires selective intervention.
Exactly. It requires you to pick a side, to
Yeah.
use federal power to rebalance the scales. So a sudden shift to a neutral, quote-unquote, colorblind enforcement. That wasn't just a policy change. It felt like an attack on their life's work.
So the goal of the memo was to end that two-tier system.
That was the stated goal, yes, to stop using identity categories as a tool to push a political agenda.
So this was a complete ideological reset. Let's dig into the actual policy shifts. What changed?
The pivot was incredibly stark. The new agenda laid out 3 core areas, and all of them signaled a major realignment toward what the administration was calling anti-woke priorities.
Okay, let's take them one by one. First up was a commitment to dismantling DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Sure.
How does the Civil Rights Division even do that nationally?
This is where the legal strategy gets very sophisticated. It's not about their own internal HR policies. It's about using their enforcement power. Specifically, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Remind us what Title VI does.
Title VI prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin in any program that gets federal funding.
Good.
So the new strategic interpretation is that many modern DEI programs, especially ones that look like they have quotas or race-based preferences in hiring or admissions, actually violate Title VI.
Because they require treating people differently based on race.
Precisely. So the same division that was accused of pushing identity politics is now using that same bedrock civil rights law to dismantle programs that classify people by identity.
That is a wild pivot. So they would go after universities, hospitals.
Anyone getting federal money, they'd investigate them for reverse discrimination. It's a way to weaponize regulatory enforcement. The threat of losing your federal funding is a very powerful tool to force change.
Wow. Okay, what was the second major shift in the memo?
The second was a complete 180 on transgender rights policies.
The ones inherited from the last administration.
Right. As we mentioned, the division had been interpreting Title IX, which is about sex-based discrimination in education, to include gender identity for things like sports.
And the new mandate changes